a huge welcome to our channel. We are so excited to have you here, and we're working around the clock to bring you the most unforgettable stories. Help us hit our first big milestone by subscribing so we can reach 1,000 subscribers together. Now, let's get into tonight's story. My sister stole my wedding. I don't mean she copied my color scheme or bought a similar dress. I mean she called the venue, used her influence to cancel my booking, and took the entire day for herself. But what she didn't know was that her perfect fiancé was a complete fraud, and I had just uncovered the evidence that would do more than ruin a party. It was about to completely dismantle her life. My entire life, I've been the supporting actress in the Chloe show. My older sister, Chloe, wasn't just the star of our family. She was the sun, the moon, and all the planets. She was the one who got the lead in the school play, the scholarship to the best college, the promotion everyone was fighting for. She radiated a kind of effortless confidence that made people want to do things for her. I was the quiet one, the planner, the person who made sure the bills were paid on time and who cleaned up the trail of chaos she often left behind. It was a role I never auditioned for, but had played for so long I had forgotten what it felt like to not be in her shadow, until she finally went too far. My wedding to my fiance Mark was supposed to be the one thing that was unequivocally mine. We had spent more than a year planning every single detail. We fell in love with a venue in the Hudson Valley called the Willow Creek Manor. It was this gorgeous old estate with ivy covered stone walls, sprawling green lawns, and gardens that overlooked the river. It felt historic and deeply personal, like a secret we had discovered together. We chose our date, the anniversary of the day we met, and put down a significant non refundable deposit. My dress, a simple but beautiful gown that made me feel like the best version of myself, was already paid for and hanging in my closet. Everything was set. It was our story finally being written, and then Chloe got engaged. You have to understand, Chloe had always been cynical about marriage. She called it a creatively bankrupt institution for people with no other life goals. She treated men like seasonal accessories. She'd have a summer banker or a fall artist, only to discard them when the next shinier model came along. So, when she showed up at my small city apartment, flashing a diamond the size of a small bird's egg and announcing her engagement, I was in shock. Of course, I hugged her. I squealed and told her how happy I was for her because that's what the supportive sister does. But when I looked in her eyes, I didn't see joy. I saw a predator's glint, a cold, competitive fire that sent a shiver down my spine. The real blow came a few weeks later. I got a frantic call from my wedding coordinator. Amelia, there's a problem with the manor, she said, her voice strained. They've had to cancel your reservation. Apparently, there was a double booking and a high profile client has taken precedence. The floor felt like it had dropped out from under me. I told her that was impossible. We had a signed contract. I immediately called the Willow Creek Manor myself, my hands shaking with a rage that was foreign to me. I demanded to speak to the general manager. He was slippery, talking about unfortunate mix ups and policies for VIPs. I wouldn't let him off the phone. I pressed him, asking who could possibly have the power to just erase our wedding. After a long, painful silence, he finally gave me a name: Chloe. I drove to her gleaming high rise apartment in a state of numb disbelief. This had to be a mistake. She couldn't have done this on purpose. But the second she opened the door, I knew. She knew exactly what she had done. She was standing there in a silk robe, holding a glass of champagne, the absolute picture of unapologetic arrogance. Chloe, what is happening? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The manor called. They cancelled our wedding. She took a slow, deliberate sip of her champagne and looked me right in the eye. She didn't even try to pretend she was sorry. Save the drama, Amelia, she said, her voice like velvet covered steel. The day is mine now. I just stared at her, unable to form words. She continued, laying out her logic as if it were perfectly reasonable. She explained that my wedding was going to be sweet, but ultimately forgettable. Hers, however, was going to be a major social event. Her fiance was an important man, she explained, and a wedding at a venue like Willow Creek on a prime Saturday in June was essential for their image. The date? Oh, that was just a happy coincidence, she said with a smirk that told me it was anything but. Honestly, your wedding was never going to be the main event. Mine is. It always would have been. She then had the audacity to suggest that Mark and I could just get married in our parents' backyard. It was a dismissal so profound, so utterly cruel, that it took my breath away. I left her apartment and drove aimlessly through the city, tears blurring the streetlights. Back home, I sat in the dark, the heartbreak slowly hardening into a cold, diamond hard anger. This wasn't just about a party. It was about a lifetime of being made to feel small, and my own sister was now trying to codify it. But as the fury settled, a single, sharp thought cut through the emotional fog. Something about her fiancé, Ethan, was off. Chloe, who lived her life on social media, had been weirdly private about him. A few professionally shot photos had appeared, but there was no history, no candid pictures of them on vacation, no embarrassing old photos shared by his family. It all felt like a movie set, a carefully constructed illusion. This wasn't about love, it was a business transaction. Mark was furious. He wanted to drive over there himself to confront both Chloe and Ethan, but I stopped him. I knew my sister. A direct attack would only make her double down. She would paint me as the bitter, jealous little sister, and she would win. No, this required a different tactic. This needed a strategy. So while Chloe was busy customizing my dream wedding for herself, I started my own project. I became a private investigator, fueled by a potent cocktail of spite and a growing sense of alarm. I started by digging into Ethan's digital life. His online profiles were immaculate. A finance degree from a top tier university, a history of launching successful investment funds, a long list of charitable endeavors. It was too perfect, like a character written for a novel. When I tried to dig deeper, I found nothing but dead ends. The companies he supposedly founded had glossy websites, but no real substance, no employee lists, no public filings. The charities he claimed to be a major donor to had no record of his existence. A week later, Mark came home from work looking pale. He said he'd been staring at the few photos of Ethan that Chloe had posted, and a nagging sense of familiarity had finally clicked into place. Ethan, he said, his voice low and serious. That's not his real name. A few years ago, I knew a guy who looked exactly like him. He called himself Daniel back then. Mark explained that this Daniel had wormed his way into the life of a family friend in Boston, a wealthy widow in her late 60s. He had swept her off her feet, promised her the world, and convinced her to pour her entire life savings into one of his exclusive, can't miss investment opportunities. A few months later, he vanished. The money was gone, the company was a ghost, and the woman was left with nothing but debt and a broken heart. It was a sophisticated, ruthless con. An icy cold fear washed over me. We weren't just dealing with a world class jerk, we were dealing with a predator. We pooled our savings and hired a discreet private investigator who specialized in financial fraud. It didn't take long for him to start connecting the dots. Ethan, or whatever his real name was, had a clear pattern. He targeted ambitious, successful women who had a hidden vein of insecurity he could exploit. He was a chameleon, mirroring their dreams and becoming the perfect man they thought they needed. He would build them up, make them feel invincible, and then, once he had their complete trust, he would clean them out. My sister, with her desperate need to be the best, and her access to our family's considerable trust fund, was his ultimate prize. He wasn't marrying her, he was acquiring her. I was at a crossroads. I had two options. I could go to Chloe with the investigator's initial findings, and she would laugh in my face. She would accuse me of trying to ruin her happiness out of jealousy. She would choose him, and he would succeed in isolating her from our family, draining her finances, and disappearing, leaving her utterly destroyed. Or I could let her walk down that aisle, straight into the beautiful trap she had so proudly stolen from me. I could wait, gather undeniable proof, and choose the most public, most devastating moment to reveal the truth. I will admit, a part of me, the part of me that had been silenced for my entire life, wanted her to feel the same public humiliation she had so casually inflicted on me. So I played my part. I listened to her gush about the caterer I had found. I nodded politely as she described the floral arrangements I had picked out. I let her revel in the glory of her perfect stolen day, all while I was secretly assembling the evidence that would bring it all crashing down. The day of reckoning was approaching, and just 3 days before the wedding, the private investigator sent a final overnight package. Inside was a sworn, notarized affidavit from another one of Ethan's victims, a doctor in Denver. It laid out in excruciating detail how he had romanced her, convinced her to take out a massive loan against her practice to invest in one of his fake companies, and then vanished, leaving her in financial ruin. The package also contained copies of fraudulent incorporation documents, bank statements tracing the money, and an active police report from the Denver Police Department. This was no longer a suspicion. This was a criminal case. I was holding a bomb. The only question left was when to light the fuse. The night before the wedding, I sat in my apartment, the thick manila envelope on my coffee table. I kept picturing Chloe's smug face, hearing her dismissive voice. Save the drama. For a moment, I felt a pang of doubt. She was my sister. Was I really about to do this? But then I thought about the stolen dream, the casual cruelty of it all, and most importantly, the sociopath she was about to legally bind herself to. This wasn't just payback anymore. This was a rescue operation, whether she wanted to be saved or not. The wedding morning was beautiful, a perfect sunny day in the Hudson Valley. I arrived at the Willow Creek Manor early. I wasn't wearing a bridesmaid's dress. I was wearing a simple, elegant black dress. The irony felt thick enough to choke on. The venue was breathtakingly painful. It was my exact vision, brought to life for her. My favorite flowers, peonies, and ranunculus were everywhere. The precise shade of slate blue ribbon I had spent weeks sourcing was tied to the back of every chair. It was like attending the ghost of my own wedding. I found Chloe in the bridal suite, a flurry of hairspray, champagne, and fawning friends. She was sitting in front of a mirror, looking like a queen on her throne. When she saw my reflection, her triumphant smile faltered for just a second. Well, well, I'm surprised you showed your face, she said, her voice dripping with condescending sweetness. I figured you'd be at home crying into a tub of ice cream. Her friends giggled. I walked forward, my face a mask of calm. I didn't say a word. I simply placed the thick manila envelope on the vanity in front of her. You should probably read this before you walk down that aisle, I said, my voice quiet but firm. She rolled her eyes and picked it up with an air of theatrical boredom. Is this some pathetic last-ditch effort to ruin my day? I turned to walk away, pausing at the door. No, I said, catching her eye in the mirror one last time. I'm not here to ruin your day, Chloe. I'm here to save your future. You'll understand later. I went outside and took a seat in the very back row of the ceremony chairs, an anonymous mourner at my own stolen wedding. I waited. The string quartet began to play, then stopped. 5 minutes, then 10 minutes past the scheduled start time. The guests started to whisper and shift in their seats. I saw the wedding planner speaking frantically into her earpiece. I saw Ethan's mother, a formidable woman in a designer suit, demanding to know what the delay was. Then the lodge doors of the manor house swung open, but it wasn't a radiant bride who emerged. It was a ghost. Chloe, pale as the white dress she wore, stepped out. She was clutching the papers from the envelope, her knuckles white. She walked slowly, mechanically down the aisle and stopped halfway. Every single guest was staring at her. Ethan, still standing at the altar, had a confused, charming smile on his face, a mask that was about to be torn off. Chloe lifted her head, and her voice, shockingly clear and strong, carried across the lawn. This wedding is cancelled. A wave of gasps went through the crowd. I will not be marrying this man, she continued, her eyes now locked on Ethan, whose smile had evaporated, because I have just learned who he really is. His name is not Ethan, and I refuse to be the next woman on his list of victims. She then turned to the wedding planner and announced loud enough for everyone to hear, I have already contacted the police. They are on their way. It was instant chaos. Ethan started toward her, his mouth opening to spin some new lie. But two security guards hired for the event moved instantly, intercepting him and escorting him, sputtering and protesting, into a side room to wait for the authorities. The perfect wedding, the one she had so ruthlessly taken from me, had imploded in under 5 minutes. Hours later, long after the bewildered guests had left and the caterers had begun to pack everything away, I found Chloe. She was sitting on a stone bench in the garden, the very spot where Mark and I had first said, "This is the place." Her veil was gone and her perfect hair was falling down around her shoulders. She was just staring into a fountain, holding a single crumpled piece of paper. I sat down beside her. We sat in silence for what felt like an eternity, the only sounds being the splash of the water and the chirping of birds. Finally, she spoke, her voice a raw whisper. "I deserved this," she said, not looking at me. "Every part of it." I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no. I just nodded. In that one quiet moment, she wasn't the golden child and I wasn't the shadow. We were just two sisters sitting in the ruins of a life that had been a complete lie. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt light. The weight of being her sister, the constant crushing pressure, had finally lifted. In the months that followed, Chloe methodically dismantled her old life. She deleted her social media, sold her flashy apartment, and started seeing a therapist. We aren't best friends now. Some wounds are too deep for that. But for the first time in our lives, there is a quiet, fragile respect between us. She never gave me a grand apology for stealing my wedding, but in a way, she didn't have to. Her actions, her slow, difficult journey toward becoming a real person, said more than words ever could. And as for Mark and me, we found a new place, a small, beautiful inn on the coast of Oregon. We picked a new date in the fall when the air was crisp and the leaves were on fire with color. Our wedding was smaller, quieter, and 1,000 times more real. It wasn't a show for anyone else, it was just for us. As I walked down the aisle toward the man I loved, I felt a sense of peace I'd never known. I had fought for my happiness, not just against my sister, but against the bitterness that could have so easily consumed me. In the end, Chloe tried to steal my spotlight. But what she never understood is that a spotlight is worthless if it's illuminating a lie. The truth always finds a way to break through the cracks of any facade, and when it finally did, it shattered everything she thought she wanted, one beautiful stolen dream at a time.